Good afternoon again. Well, I've got a rather long, interesting question here in my hand from a friend in Canada, but a couple of quickies first. One person asks me, do I think? Well, yes, absolutely I do, but I'm not too sure of the phrase really. Do I think? Because if I really think seriously about that, I'm not sure that I do. I think rather that thought happens within me, rather like my tummy gurgling with indigestion or something, because thought seems to me a fairly, I won't quite say mechanical, but a fairly sort of something that, a self-generated thing that just seems to happen out of reaction to various things. It just seems to go on with a motivation of its own. And I, especially probably now after many years of spiritual practice, am more the observer of it. I think that's why it doesn't worry me really. I take it in my stride. It doesn't bother me too much. Yes, I get depressed a bit and get fed up with it. My thoughts, sometimes of course I love them and I think they're great, but there's also quite a measure of detachment. And I think that's really my best answer to those people who worry about their thoughts and try to stop them. Don't stop them, just regard them just like your digestion. It is a sort of mental digestion, isn't it? Instead of going on with chemicals in your tummy, it's going on in your mind. You're sort of chewing over all the things that have come into your life and sort of just doing that. And that's why really words are really in some sense a sort of mental excrement, aren't they? They're often not worth much more, are they? And so which leads on to the next question. Do I like to talk? And frankly the answer is no, not very much. I'd rather be silent. And I don't often, at all, very seldom do I start a conversation. I answer if someone speaks first. I speak when I'm spoken to, but generally, no, I don't like to talk, and I usually get fed up with it after a few minutes and end up wishing I hadn't said what I had said, because most of it's pretty stupid, really. Why am I talking on these videos, you might ask? Well, because I got pushed into it. Anyway, it's a newfound thing for me, which leads on to another thing, that how's it that I'm all this, people call me a giggling man now. Do you know, my friends, nothing surprises, nobody's more surprised than me that I find I'm able to laugh. You know, I've been the most serious and miserable man you could possibly imagine for most of my life. I just couldn't have laughed. People always said, why do you take life so seriously? Why can't you just sort of be normal? And I just couldn't. And isn't it extraordinary that just quite recently I find I can laugh? Well now, this leads me on to this very interesting question, which I'll have to read out little bits. It's actually called, why are Russians never happy? Well, for those that don't know, I am half Russian, and when I went to Russia in my 50s, and suddenly realised that I was among my own people, suddenly all the mysterious parts of my life became clear to me, because I'm such a typical Russian. And perhaps that's why most of my life I've been so miserable. Because Russians, it's not that they're really sort of miserable, it's just that they take life seriously and they like to think about life. And, you know, the last thing you should ever say to a Russian is cheer up. It's really like a mortal insult to them, because for them life is serious and they think about it. And of course anyone who thinks about life usually ends up getting fed pretty miserable, don't they? But I'll try to answer it more seriously, because he goes on to say Russian culture remains quite an enigma in the West. Yes, people don't understand Russians, which is quite true, and the Russians don't understand the West. One of the things that's commonly said in Russia, which came as a surprise to me, but when this topic of why aren't we happy came up, as it almost constantly does in Russian sort of conversation, Jesus suffered, and so should we. Well now, that was a new one to me. It's well known that there's no record in the Gospels that Jesus laughed. He wept, certainly. Jesus suffered, and so should we. And it was in Russia that I really began to take on board what that meant. Now, those who don't know much about Russian history may not know that among all this suffering world, few nations have suffered, particularly in this last 100 years, as much as Russia. What with the communist revolution to civil war that completely devastated the country, 22 million, or was it 27 million for God's sake, killed in the Great War. Just take that on board. The West lost about 1 million. Russians lost 27. You don't forget that in a hurry when you're in Russia. And then this letter says, how does such a surrender to misery, it seems so contrary to the joyful, giggling and thoroughly gratified picture which John now paints in his YouTube presence. Why are Russians never happy? And what advice can he offer to those of that mindset so that they may at least begin to move toward the freedom that John now exemplifies? Well, I've just had a birthday. I'm 83 years old. 83 years of suffering, my dear. That's my answer. And through it all, somehow or other, and I really don't quite know how, I've come to the conclusion that this world is pretty hopeless, really, and that it all comes to pass. It's vanity, as the good book says, and all our hopes and dreams in this world, the women we love, the ambitions we have, all these things, they come to nothing. And what do we take with us beyond the grave? Precious little. So what on earth's it all been for? Well, perhaps it's all been to teach us, to get into our thick, stupid heads that this world is not it. As Jesus says in clear and simple, the flesh profiteth nothing. And the kingdom of God is not of this world. So why on earth do we spend our lifetimes trying to pretend that it is, and trying to make a silk purse out of a sow's ear? Trying to turn a dead end into something worth striving for. And I think that's what the conclusion we come to, that finally you just give up on this world and you realize that there's something like that, what I was saying about thinking. The I that we are, the real I that I am, is not this old decrepit thing called John Butler standing in front of you. It is a spiritual freedom. And I can laugh about that, because once you begin to see that, this whole worldly, tragic comedy of life, you see it just as that. It's all past, it's all down there. That's it, it's down there. Do you know, Bakewell has one of the biggest cattle markets in the country. And when I first went to Bakewell Market as a boy of 10, I was so shocked by it, by what I felt, the brutality of what was taking place there, that I came home, I shut myself in my room, and I sobbed uncontrollably. And yesterday I walked around that same cattle market. Of course, it's all modernized and greatly expanded now. And you know, I loved every hair and stick and stone of it. I did. Do you know? And what made the difference? I had no criticism of the rough men or the bang, 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 the poor sort of not happy creatures, because years ago that market was bigger than me, and now I'm above it, and now it's just something, it's not bigger than me, it's inside me. I'm bigger than it. And so I can look down on it as a children's nursery and smile. I can look at the whole world like that, my dears, not only the market. I can look at this whole great drama of coronavirus and all the things going on in the world now, the absurd and the beautiful. And I can just smile at it, because it's not it. It's not it at all, my dears. Freedom is to get above it. And you look down as like a bird's eye view, and you see this world. It's just a lawful playing out of various forces in which man loses himself, and that's why man makes such a mess of it and pulls nature down with him and brings all this death and corruption into the world. And through it all, hopefully by learning what a fool he is and what a mess he makes of everything, man, by hook or by crook, comes back to realize what he actually is, which is freedom. And then you can indeed be like a giggling ass, like I am on this video now. I can just laugh at it. even the miserable Russians, because that's me. There we are, my dears. That's freedom, and that's how it's done. Go on, wallow on through the suffering until you just get fed up with it. And then you can't get any more. You're just sick of it. And God knows how I've got here. I don't know. Good luck to you, my dears. Keep struggling on through this veil of tears, and God willing, you'll come to freedom. Bye-bye for now. God bless you. Until tomorrow.